It's not those. It's not the one. And calls our city council person every other day. Because if it went to the resident, hi Patrick, I'm Lisa. Nice to meet you.
Corey.
What's your last name? Morgan? Okay, great. Are you part of Dallas? Oh, okay, great. We all kind of know each other from so that's what we were just trying to catch up. And Corey kind of has an architectural background.
What do you do?
I'm an IT.
Okay.
I do
Oh, wow, cool. You know what I was thinking about? You know what I was thinking about on the way up here? I was thinking about the new voices. When I went to the Forward Dallas hearing over in East Dallas, where we have a lot of very loud people who have opinions, and I heard a couple of young people speak. And all of those young people said the same thing. We want high density. Exactly. And you know what? And you know what all the 70-year-old, 80-year-old, we don't want any of that money. We don't want any affordable housing. We need to go back somewhere else. So, but it's kind of like, this is a 10-year plan. A lot of these people who are so it's kind of
leave North House alone. Do that in South. The whole bottom half of the city. You all right here.
exactly. But yeah, it's kind of so it was interesting, and I was thinking about that because that's what kind of some of the stuff you said, and I certainly understand people like to keep their single family neighborhoods, and that's the way that's the way it should be. But there should also be room for flexibility and all the affordable housing should not be in one tiny space because that's what happens over by my neighborhood. Our communities, we have melting pot neighborhoods over there, and crime follows short-term, or not short-term, crime follows those kinds of low-income people around. And so you have these pockets of possibly poor people, crime feeding on them. They have no way to get it. And if you can spread that out a little bit.
They can build communities across the
It should, because also some of the people who speak about it, these are taking up affordable housing. I'm like, do you have any affordable housing in your neighborhood? No. Well, there isn't any affordable housing. Yeah. It's well, I mean, there's a place and location. But anyway, it's an interesting conversation with a lot of very agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Where you see it, we see it like concentration, like there's cases of zoning.
No. Don't use that term with short-term rentals. Please. They're totally different.
So, what
Yeah, the Texas legal case law.
we have,
But just for talking among us chickens, that's different.
they service them.
Not really. But sometimes. Get the one night.
Or one to 4 nights.
Sure.
But if someone's doing drawing,
It's a different. I think the director of Dallas Housing, David Norris, that he's like, there's a place for all kinds of housing. I mean, there's a
Good evening. It's great to see so many people here. Thank you for coming out to spend your evening with us. I'm Megan Weimer. I am one of the assistant directors with Planning and Development in the City of Dallas. And I have my colleagues with me. We have our deputy directors, Andrea Uzle and Andrea Gillis, and our manager, Jennifer Allgeier, in the back, friendly Dallas faces. And again, I'm just very happy to see everyone. I'm going to hand the mic over to our consultants to take it from here.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you all for coming tonight. Great to see everybody here this evening. We do have a couple announcements, but I wanted to introduce myself first. I'm Arista Strunges. I am a principal and partner in the planning firm of Camiros. The main office is located in Chicago, but I am joined by Chris Jeanette, who is our Louisville office, and Mitchell Corona, who is our Cary, North Carolina? Roundabouts Cary, North Carolina office. And we are very happy to be here. So we want to make a few announcements at the outset of this before we dive in to the presentation. So first, kind of a late development today. This meeting is actually being broadcast wherever your meetings are broadcast in Dallas at the request of the council person. So just so you're aware, you're on TV. I'm on TV too. Probably more than you guys, so it'll be okay. But yeah, this was a late development. We hadn't planned to broadcast these meetings as a typical community meeting, so just so you're aware. The way that this is going to go, I'm going to do a presentation. It's about 35 minutes long. If you want to time me, feel free. And then after that, we'll do a whole Q&A session. A couple things about this. Dallas is a city of many places, many people, many different opinions. Everybody, please be very respectful. We don't want anybody talking over others' comments or kind of making distractions. I read online by Google that Texas is one of the most polite places in the country, so you have a lot to live up to. Also, in terms of comments, somebody will be coming around with the mic. Is it Jacob? It's going to be Jacob. Jacob will be coming around with the mic. We're going to try and get people that we haven't heard from first and then kind of circle back. We do have to end around just after 7:30 because the people that work at the rec center want to go home. So just wanted to put that out there. Just a couple notes here. We are, as you stand up and give us comments, we are taking notes on what you're saying, but we're not taking verbatim comments. What we really want is a written record so we don't misunderstand what you are trying to tell us. There's a number of ways to do that. You've probably already been introduced to the comment cards that are at the table. You can write a response on there, submit it. It's all coming to us. The website also has a comment form that you can use. If you don't like the comment form, there's also an email address that you can either directly write an email or you can send in the document. So there's a number of different ways. For us, it's very important to have written documentation so that everybody on the team is seeing all of the same stuff. And then finally, these are more announcements than any other meeting, so you guys in meeting 5 should feel kind of special. The videographer is here. He's been here at all of the meetings. He could probably give the presentation for me at this point. He will be after the meeting out in the hallway. If you'd like to leave a short soundbite with him, just your kind of thoughts on the process, that would be great. We're using that for promotional material just to show what's been going on in these meetings. He's the guy with the camera. I'm pretty sure everybody could figure that out, but that is Cameron right there. Okay. All right, so let's dive into this presentation. So this is the Dallas zoning reform. Oh, wait, one other announcement. We didn't write it down because Chris gave me notes and I forgot this one. Just so you know, all of this presentation, the code diagnostic, those papers you've been picking up, the executive summaries, all of that is on the website. So you can download all of those. You're free to take pictures of the PowerPoint if you want to do that. But there is a full exact copy of it in PDF on there that you can download. So, okay, did I get everything? All right, we practiced this in the car. So, Dallas zoning reform, simple, clear, future ready. We want to make an ordinance that is simple, streamlined regulations that reduces any kind of unnecessary complexity, clear rules that are understood by everybody and not just specialists, and then future ready, designed for the Dallas we're becoming, not the Dallas of yesterday. Folks have asked, what is Dallas becoming? We're really getting that guidance from Forward Dallas, which is one of the first objectives of this process. So we are trying to achieve a number of things within this. The first is to implement Forward Dallas that provides us our guidance on land use and development. The plan is a comprehensive plan, and it is just that, comprehensive. So everything that is in Forward Dallas cannot be implemented through zoning. We're looking at really things that relate to development and land use and how those are handled. We want to make a code that's very user-friendly, predictable, and consistent, something that's a lot easier to understand than your current book, which is quite big, a lot of detail in there, and very hard to kind of figure out what you need to figure out. Building on some of the themes of Forward Dallas, creating new opportunities for diverse and affordable housing. That was one of the main policies there, so looking at what we can do within zoning in order to achieve that. Promoting sustainability and resiliency. We want to move forward in an environmentally responsible manner. Integrating design standards throughout the code so that as development comes in, it's consistent and it's of a high quality. So making sure we're bringing that thread throughout the code. Reducing dependence on special approvals and allowing things we want to see to happen by right. And then increasing the transparency of different development approvals within the city. So what is this code diagnostic? What are we here tonight to discuss? So really what this is a presentation of our technical review of the document and some of the approaches and concepts we want to put forward. Really a lot of the work that went into this was the team that you see here, reading through the book, really looking at everything that's in there, doing an analysis of GIS. We had some stakeholder interviews, and those are really with one-on-one interviews with certain technicians that use the code on a more frequent basis to really understand, hey, I do stuff with the zoning code in Dallas, how is it working, what's good, what's bad. And then obviously a lot of discussions with staff who work with the code on a daily basis to really understand kind of what's going on a day-to-day basis with zoning and development. So I kind of already alluded to this, but what is a code diagnostic? It's really presenting some of the bigger issues, looking at alignments with best practices in zoning and common special approvals that may be happening throughout the city. It is a proposal, and that's what we're here to do, is to gather some feedback on the proposals we've put forth. What do you think about that? It's really presenting these concepts and getting feedback and then providing us direction and drafting. I think it's important to note the code diagnostic is not being revised. The book that you see, that you download from the website, that's the final document because it's really intended to be something that folks react to. So really, as you look at it, we're still taking comments. Obviously, we'll be taking comments for a while. Please let us know what you think. So let's start jumping into the good stuff. Organization. The book is hard to follow. I've worked in zoning for over 25 years. I've seen some of the worst of the worst. You're not the worst of the worst, so don't feel bad. But there's ways to make this much easier for everybody to understand. Part of this is a graphic orientation, really illustrating as much as you can, so that way concepts are both text as well as illustrated to help folks know what we intend by the different regulations. Making sure we do good definitions for all the terms of the ordinance, and that includes everything from general terms that are used to what the uses are. So we reduce interpretation, make administration a little bit easier. Measurement methodologies, just to be consistent, put them all in one place and make sure we're measuring everything the same throughout the city. So that would be something like building height. It'd be found in one spot. We'd be able to always identify how exactly that would be measured. A consistent voice. As you look at the zoning code, you can see there's been amendments over the course of the 40 years since there's been a last comprehensive look at it. And so we want to make sure that one voice is being used throughout the process. And then finally, compartmentalization. This is a key thing that really, really helps make a code easy to use and understand and find what you're looking for, is making sure we're grouping kind of the land use regulations into logical categories. Usually you can see some examples here. There's a bit more explanation within the code diagnostic itself about kind of putting like with like. So we would have all the industrial district regulations in one spot. Uses would all be in one spot. So with this, kind of creating this new code, we're moving away from the alphabet system of 51, 51A. We're not doing 51B. We'll be doing chapter 63. Somebody asked why 63? It's the next open chapter within the city code, which is where all of this lives. So it's just the number that's available right now. And so essentially with the new chapter 63, we're going to move all the zoning and subdivision there. Some of the stuff in 51A is not part of our purview to update. You can see them listed there, things like parkland dedication, floodplain, historic preservation, gas drilling. Those will remain in 51A. And so one thing to say is, we're going to get to this, we're going to discuss this in detail. We know PDs are a big thing here, but I want everybody to be clear. We'll be maintaining, like you have 51, we'll be maintaining 51A for all those planned developments that have been approved under that set of codes. Okay, big stuff now. Uses. Listing lists of uses within individual districts creates opportunities for inconsistencies, not allowing uses you want to allow, allowing uses you don't want to allow. So what we want to do is put them all in one spot within one global use matrix. And you can see an example here. I've been pointing this out. Don't try to read it and think it's for Dallas. This is Hot Springs, Arkansas. But it's really just showing how these tables are laid out. The benefit of doing this is what you'll see is there across the top are all the different districts that are found in the city, and then down the side are all the uses that we allow, both principal and accessory. So if I'm in a certain district, I can go down the column and see exactly what I can do with my piece of property. If I want to open a business, say is highlighted here, arts and fitness studio, I can go across the table and I can see which districts would allow me to do that. It eliminates any inconsistencies. It makes sure everything is only happening in one place. Adding in new uses as they come out, modifying uses or modifying use permissions becomes simpler because it's all located in this one table. Key part of this as well, every one of these uses is going to be defined. Again, that reduction in interpretation. And in some cases, some of these uses will have standards and conditions attached to them that regulate some of their impacts when they locate there. So it may be something like the common example we always talk about is a drive-through. Let's have some sighting standards. Let's have some screening standards for the noise and stuff that it generates. So just every use would have to comply with that. So that's a key example. You have a lot of ways to approve uses. Your most typical one here is the specific use permit. This is common to pretty much everywhere we've ever worked, except for some weird places Chris has worked in Maine. They want to do it differently. But this is a very common thing. It's a useful tool. We're proposing to maintain it and really use it the way that it should be used. And you've got other types of use permissions in place there. You've got the limited uses, the development impact review, the residential adjacency review. We think a lot of this can be addressed through things like looking at creating use standards, creating conditions, and looking at issues like maybe some uses would require things like a site plan review depending on their size and scale. One of the things that's very unique here to Dallas that we haven't seen elsewhere is the renewal of specific use permits. And this is a touchy subject we've learned over the past 5 meetings. So we just want to talk about it a little bit. And so basically our recommendation would be to not make special SUPs. If you hear me say special uses, it's the same thing. To not make SUPs subject to renewal. It's not common. It's essentially saying, we think this use is appropriate if it's subject to these conditions, subject to this additional layer of review and approval, and special uses technically run with the land. We think it creates an unpredictable environment at times because there's issues of, well, hey, I don't know if I want to open my business because in 2 years I'm going to have to come back, and what if they don't renew it? There's things that looks like it's kind of trying to control, how it's operated and making favorites, like playing favorites with who's trying to open a business. So that's what we're seeing there. We think there's a couple of things that can really help with this. You can always revoke a special or a specific use permit. That would remain. We can look at ways to put conditions on different types of uses, but we think it's important to at least discuss this. We know it's touchy, but discuss it. We know one of the specific use permits that's out there that is very sensitive, since we're talking about uses, is industrial uses. We're very well aware of that. We're going to continue to dive into that much deeper. Just really looking at how we're treating industrial uses and how they're working kind of with other, with compatibility issues, quite frankly. And then finally for uses, we wanted to add a bunch. Many of these are intended to be kind of cool, vibrant things that we think, the city of Dallas should make clear that they're welcome to locate in the city. So those are things like artisan workshops, food truck parks, specialty food service, and nobody ever knows what that is. It's like a coffee roaster. Commercial kitchens, so really all those kind of creative uses. The first one you see there on that list, though, is corner stores. And what we want to do, we want to take a look at areas where you have kind of corner stores, commercial uses that have always existed and they're open now in the way that we've proposed it within the code diagnostic. And again, we want to emphasize it's a proposal, so we want to hear from you on these things, is that if it is there, if it exists, we can create a way to allow that use within the residential districts because it is already existing and operating. That is what we're trying to look at with that, and that's the proposal that's on the table. There may be other districts, when you start to get out into more of the mixed-use districts or districts that have, a variety of kind of residential within them, that corner stores, maybe new ones, would be desirable. But really the intent of this one is to capture things that have always existed on the corner. And these would all have very strict standards around them to really control how they operate, what they can be, how big they can be, because we want them to be local. We're not trying to build big things in these areas. So we're into the big part of the code. So this is where we get really intense. We're into the districts. So some of the key proposals that we have out there, simplifying the single family and increasing conformance. So looking at your current single family districts. We'll talk about it in a second, kind of the development patterns there and making sure we're capturing them appropriately. Creating another set of gentle density districts. These would be new, that would allow for more housing diversity. Refining multifamily and townhouse, so they're kind of logical and functioning. Creating a scale of commercial and mixed-use districts that increase in intensity and scale, kind of going from the neighborhood all the way to the regional. Integrating mixed-use development into the commercial districts. I know some of you are all aware, SB 840. There's three of them, I forget the numbers. SB 840 has kind of made mixed use much easier to do. We're looking at it. We don't have a definitive statement on what we think SB 840 says, but just so you're aware, we're aware. Refining the range of industrial districts to be kind of very precise on what they are, what they mean, what can locate there. And then making sure special purpose and overlay districts address the things that they need to address. So let's dive into the first one. These are your existing single-family residential districts. We did a significant amount of analysis on these. Actually, just to say, Mitch did a significant amount of analysis on these, kind of taking a look at the development patterns. So when you're seeing things that we say maintain or reduce, we're just looking at the development pattern there that's saying, so as we look at the R1 acre district, what we see there is there's a lot of lots that don't meet that 1 acre minimum. If it was reduced to what's called a builder's acre of 40,000 square feet rather than 43,560 square feet, I always remember it's 7-Eleven. So if we reduce it to the builder's acre, you can up the compliance. And again, that 3,000 square foot difference really wouldn't impact things like subdivision of these areas. The half acre seems to be working pretty well. It's not a large portion of the city, but really most lots there do conform. I'm going to skip ahead too. You see some good conformance within R75 and R5. These are kind of the biggest districts within the city. So really just looking at those and saying, yeah, they're working. And then finally, you've got the R16, R13, and R10. Very little difference between these three districts. They're really, they don't take up a lot of land area, and they're very minor differences between them. If we can consolidate them into one single-family district, say the R10 of 10,000 square feet, you would get a lot of compliance with the minimum lot size. Because you can see here that they're really not, they've got some wonkiness in the number of lots that don't conform to that. So it's just a simplification of bringing them down into one district. Again, these are all single-family districts, and so this analysis is really just based on the existing development patterns. We also added a couple proposals for some new stuff. The first new district would be an R3 single-family district. So again, this would be single-family, but this would be for small lots to capture small lot urban residential areas. You've even got some that are out there. We did some preliminary analysis. This is not a rezoning recommendation. This is just an analysis that you've already got like 2,000 properties out there that are 3,000 square feet. So it's already out here in Dallas. Now the next one. I have learned, you're going to read the executive summary, and I have learned that me trying to be very creative in my writing has confused people when I say a parallel set of gentle density districts. I was being descriptive. It is not a technical zoning term. Parallel, just, I thought I was clever. Sometimes you fail. So what we want to do is create an entirely new set of districts, basically taking what you've got as the single-family districts, the R10 through the R3, and create a set of districts using that adds in duplex, triplex, quadruplex in addition to single-family. That's that gentle density, that missing middle. These would be an entirely new set of districts. And a lot of this, when we talk about zoning and when we update codes and when we add new districts, sometimes these districts don't even make it onto the map initially. The idea is to have the tools in the toolkit ready to go. Because we're going to talk about it. You guys got a problem with PDs, and we don't want to keep doing everything through PD. We want to be able to say, hey, this area really is ready for this type of development. We know exactly what we want to see when that goes into place. And so it's really kind of, we sometimes talk about them as back pocket districts. And that's the intent of having these here so that you're ready to go when areas are ready to transition into this type of development. Clarifying these guys, the townhouse and the multifamily. There are 3 townhouse districts. The use permissions are identical within them. They have some density limits, but they go from 6 to 12. We think that these can be combined. These can be another form of these gentle density residential districts, and to create some townhouse development that that the city would like to see. So consolidating these 3, and then simplifying controls with a single minimum lot area per dwelling unit. So that would control the density. I think what's important here is also to control some design standards and some siting standards for these. So you're getting, as we talked about, integrating design. This would be one of those areas where we would start to integrate design into the townhouse developments. The multifamily districts, and just kind of looking at these and kind of anecdotal information on them, the base standards may be too low. There seems to be a heavy reliance on affordable mixed income bonuses for project feasibility. And so what we want to do is look at the multifamily districts and just make sure that we've got kind of 2 that really work for the city. And so right now you've got 4. Very little distinctions between them when you group them together. So what we're saying is to consolidate MF1 and MF2. These would be a lower scale, lower density multifamily district. Looks to allow kind of a full range of dwellings within it. And then MF3 and MF4 would be combined to create a higher density tier, really restricted to that type of high density development. Again, a lot of form scale, a lot of form controls, a lot of controls on design, a lot of controls on scale to make sure that these bigger buildings also look good. You currently have a mixed income bonus. We see utility in that. We propose to maintain that. We're going to have to tweak it because it's going to be talking about things that kind of aren't in the code anymore or districts have changed, but the kind of intent of that is a useful tool. The commercial districts, we want to create, like I said, that logical scale. So first off, you have office districts. I think we're all kind of well aware post-pandemic. Not really office exclusive. Small office exclusive districts really aren't, feasible. There's not a lot of demand for office space kind of anywhere. So we want to integrate them into the mixed use districts. So basically they just become a component of that. Also creates kind of a more comprehensive environment. You can actually work there and you can get lunch somewhere and you can do an errand while you're there. So really just integrating them into the other districts. The NS and the CR, these again, kind of smaller scale commercial, maintaining those. These really kind of serve the local environment. We say this now, we got here, revised for mixed use development opportunities. State did that for you. So really some of these are things we're going to have to comply with as we draft this code. Regional retail, that's the RR district. You need a place for the car dealers, you need a place for the IKEA, the Costco. And that's really what these kind of auto-centric, large-scale commercial areas are for. So it's basically making sure we've got standards in place so that they develop the way that we want them to develop. Mixed-use districts, really just creating that full range of mixed use, getting rid of these percentages that you currently have that limit the amount of different types of commercial or residential that are in place. We want to be flexible with these and create true kind of vibrant mixed-use districts. Similarly, TOD districts, transit-oriented development, are a type of mixed-use district, but really oriented towards supporting transit stations. And one of the things we know is all transit stations are not created equal. So we can't just do one TOD district. We want to look at ones that are kind of lower in scale and then those that are higher in scale. So it's really just important to be kind of context sensitive as to where these TOD districts would locate. The central area districts, that's your downtown. We really want to take a look at that and make sure that we're kind of acknowledging its character. The CBD we're envisioning it really at this point with purpose-specific sub-districts. The first would be the core, which is kind of the center of the downtown, the tallest buildings, your skyline, making sure that we're allowing for that to be enhanced as time goes on with new buildings. The CBD outer core, so what you see here is you're starting to feather out from the middle, so kind of the scale goes down a little bit to, that kind of mixed-use development that's kind of directly around the core. And then finally, kind of once you move away from the core, and it's not a perfect circle, I know, but we can just think about it that way, would be the CBD residential mixed-use area. So it's kind of feathering down really to that lowest scale there. And it really just meant to kind of acknowledge the character of the central business districts. A couple of ones that are in the code now that we looked at, you have the urban corridor districts. They have a ton of requirements in them, and maybe that's why they're nowhere to be found on the map. And we think they can just be eliminated and absorbed into other mixed-use areas. Similarly, you have these very odd multiple commercial districts. They have a mix of required non-residential uses in the building. That's not necessary. You don't need to do that. And I don't believe that they're on the map either, but don't quote me on that right now. And again, I think we can just bring this into the kind of scale of commercial and mixed-use districts. And then finally, there's the kind of unique commercial district of the form-based code. Within that, you see a lot of design and scale and form being controlled there differently than the other districts. We think as we take the good intent of what's in the form-based districts, we can consolidate them into the other districts. So essentially, we're not losing the good stuff about form-based code and these districts that are in place there. We're just bringing it into so everybody else looks just as good as they do. So that's really what the intent there is. And districts can vary on the amount of design control that are placed upon. The industrial districts, a couple things here. We want to make sure that we're really clear on what each of these districts mean and the types of uses that are allowed, so the purpose and the use all aligns together. So we've made some proposals here to make them a little more predictable in intent. So currently you have the light industrial and you have the industrial research district. The distinctions between them are kind of vague. We want to bring them together into one district that is the RL Research and Logistics District, which would be for large-scale office and research campuses, some light industrial, some logistics, kind of the stuff that all takes place inside and doesn't have additional impacts on the outside when they're located there. The big one where I know we're going to be doing a lot of work and looking at the uses that are in it, the uses and the conditions that are tied to those, is your current IM industrial manufacturing. We're proposing a name change to general industrial to be more specific that it is a general industrial district. And just really, we're going to be working on that one to make sure we can address what's going on within that. And we've proposed a new flex commercial district. This is really targeted towards areas that used to be industrial that are starting to transition. You see they still have industrial uses going on within them, but all of a sudden there's a doggy daycare, and there's a microbrewery, and there's the curves, and there's an inside soccer, but it's still got industrial stuff going on. They're often known as the cool parts of town. We want to make sure that we've got a district that facilitates that allows that to happen when that does happen, so that you can get the proper mix of stuff going on in there, that there's levels of compatibility that can be maintained. And then finally, you have the Commercial Service District, CS. Commercial service almost sounds like an office district. So we want to rename it to the Business Industrial, because it is industrial in nature, to distinguish it from the commercial districts, and better reflect the kind of range of activities that are allowed within it. So it's really kind of important that we talk about in the purpose statement and in the name exactly what the Business Industrial District is. The last set of districts we've got, these are special purpose and overlay. So special purpose district is targeting one particular thing. You've got a bunch in place, and we haven't recommended making many changes or any changes to the three you see there. The agricultural district, the MH manufactured home district, and the CD conservation district. So those would be maintained. And the next set, we're proposing kind of two new things to add to this list. The first would be an institutional district. It's actually taking what you have as an institutional overlay and creating a base district so we can address the kind of campus form that many of these take, whether they be healthcare institutions, government facilities, or colleges and universities. In some cases, I've seen it applied to giant high schools. So we could really focus in on how that campus develops. So we want to make sure that we have a district reserved for these. The other special purpose is the OS open space. This would be for large parks and kind of recreation centers, like we've been at a couple times now, as well as natural features. So it's a district that's really strictly reserved for those. I want to be clear, that doesn't mean you can't have parks in other districts. You can. This is a district that's targeting these larger scale ones that are out there. Then moving on, you've got the overlay districts. In many cases, we just want to maintain the current overlays that you have. You may be familiar with some of them: the historic, the demolition delay, Turtle Creek, neighborhood forest, airport flight path, neighborhood stabilization. So those are the ones, they seem to be fulfilling their purpose as an overlay. If there's any alignments or tweaks that need to happen, we will definitely look into those. I'm going to talk a little bit, I'm going to come to the one, I know everybody's eyeing it, so I'm going to come back to it in a second. A couple of these legacy districts that we talk about, these are districts you can't apply for anymore, but we need to have their regulations on the books somewhere. So they continue to be there for those that have it, but nobody can have a new one. It's things like the liquor control, the modified delta, which is parking, the parking district, which is parking, and you also have the parking management district, which is parking. So you can a lot of parking overlays. You don't need to. So what we want to do is make sure that we eliminate those. One other suggestion that we've had on here that you can see, and this is one where we've been getting a lot of feedback on, both positive and negative, is eliminating the ADU overlay and allowing ADUs as a use within districts. Essentially making ADUs, the proposal, again, proposal, so we want to hear feedback, is to allow them by right with a whole set of very strict standards tied to them. So there's restrictions on size, on height, on location, on what size lot you would have to have one. There's so many different things that you can do in terms of regulating them to allow them more easily by right. So that's kind of a big one that's out there. We've had a lot of feedback on that already. We welcome more feedback on that. And we know that that's an issue for the city to kind of keep thinking about. So what are we doing with some of the district controls more generally? First up, we want to create the distinction between a yard and a setback. And if you've been to these meetings before, because I see some familiar faces, the importance of this is a setback is the required minimum of the district. So the district may say your house has to be set a minimum of 20 feet back. That would be the setback. But you would like a larger front yard, so you set your house back 30 feet. That area between the building wall and where the minimum setback is kind of a no man's land. So when we say yard, we mean the front of the building to the front lot line. And that becomes your yard. And that's what these are illustrating. And the importance of this is that if you control things only by minimum setbacks, that leaves that area, that 10-foot area, in a no man's land. And if somebody set their house very far back, and you don't specifically say, and this is the example, and I swear, one of these meetings somebody's going to have this, you say no swimming pools in the front yard, that makes sure that you don't get a swimming pool in front of the house. I hope that makes sense, but I think you kind of get used to it as you go on. It's really a way to control a lot of accessory structures and other general development standards. We want to take a look at all the setbacks. One of these is the single family, looking at regulating the front setback by an averaging provision. The benefit to this is really, as you go along the block face, the houses have the same natural rhythm amongst each other, rather than just kind of a random setback that's put into place. So that's one of the reasons that we're making that recommendation. We want to clarify a number of different things, like interior side yards, corner side yards, rear yards, really making sure that we've set these out specifically and kind of look at how they're working. And then finally, clarifying controls on building coverage, which you currently have, and adding in its new best friend, the impervious surface maximum. And what that controls is both the number of buildings on the lot as well as the paving. Very important for stormwater runoff control. So essentially making sure there's green space on the lot, not only just to kind of, look good, but also to function as an environmental asset to that lot. A couple of other zoning district controls that we would like to update. First off is measuring building height in feet, not in stories, so that we know kind of what the overall height of a building is, and that would be the functional control. Again, kind of talked about this already, but looking at the maximum heights for multifamily and non-residential, making sure that we're allowing kind of the right types of heights in the right areas of the city. Big one, another big one, you guys are on the last meeting, so you get to hear what everybody else said. So, eliminating the residential proximity slope and tower spacing and moving into a more contextual transition control. We understand the importance of RPS, the residential proximity slope, and we understand that it's big buildings going in next to small buildings, in particular single family. And there's ways to do that that don't have the complicated issues that the RPS creates. It's basically, it extends for infinity, it says infinite. And so what we really want to do is make sure that we're dealing with it on a more site-specific level. Chris, I'm stealing your explanation. On a more site-specific level so that when things are locating next to each other, we can control the heights in different ways and make sure we maintain that compatibility. We don't have the full technical draft of what we're going to do, how we're going to do that. We've done it a couple different ways in other places, but the thing is we have to tailor everything to you. So we're going to continue to evaluate that, and we hope that you would let us show you the proposal, because really we're not trying to get rid of what RPS is doing, we just want to do it better and easier. Kind of a couple other things, eliminating dwelling units per acre. It's kind of a much older way of controlling density. We want to control by the lot area. Similarly, FAR, really created for skyscrapers. We think with the other controls in place, things like setbacks, building coverage, all these different things we want to add in, we can control the building volume a little bit better. And then, I've said this before, but design standards included within most districts. Okay, so I have to do it. I've done it at every meeting. So now we're at the top of the hill, and now we're going to be going down the bottom of the hill. So we're going to go through kind of the rest of the slides, but that is really kind of the heart of the code, is the districts and the uses. So first up is general development standards. So we've kind of talked about, as we talk about uses and districts, it's the principal use of the lot, the principal structure on the lot. We want to talk about all the other stuff that happens on a lot. So many of these are kind of common. Make sure we have the right controls in place for things like fences, mechanical equipment, special regulations that the city may have, you know, things like dumpsters and recycling containers, making sure that we've got those all laid out. We want to look at exterior lighting controls, you know, not something so technical that most folks can't pick up the book and understand what it means, and that staff needs to get specialists on board to administer them, but things that really do help with glare, pollution, and trespass, and really kind of, again, kind of looking at environmental sustainability, resiliency, you know, some lighting controls that are typically very helpful. Accessory structures, general standards for those, but then some of them need some specifics, so we'd be looking at things like detached garages, sheds, apiaries, solar and wind. There may be others, just some examples of typical accessory structures. We want to make sure that we've got those regulations in place to kind of control where they go on the lot. Again, looking at issues of compatibility. This little table here is kind of very important if we remember the yard setback discussion. So this is really looking at permitted encroachments, and this is not Dallas, again, this is, I told everybody, it's Palos Park, Illinois, if anybody knows where that is. And it's really just looking at architectural features that would encroach into required setbacks, so things like eaves, or chimneys, or bay windows, so that as you're building your home, in particular, a lot of these really do focus on kind of homes, the residential components, that you can have, you know, the ability to articulate that facade, to add some architectural interest. As you see here on this chart, in some cases, some of them aren't allowed to encroach. And then in other cases they can, but we've got maximums of how much they can go in, how far they might have to be from a lot line. So there's still controls. It's not just a blanket, hey, make a 10-foot eve and go to the lot line. We want to make sure that they're controlled properly as well. So, you just got done with parking reform. And so now we're coming in with the code update, and you're probably wondering how the two are going to work together. Well, we are going to be working with what was adopted and just making sure it aligns with the code. We're not making any recommendations for any kind of significant changes to that. We just need to make sure that it's working with the way that the new code would be structured, but substantially, the contents, that's going to remain what you guys just worked through over the course of a few years. Similarly, landscape, not quite as recent, as parking reform, but it's something that has been recently updated. We want to make sure as we're looking through it, again, aligning it with the rest of the code, making sure it's all, like I said, that consistent voice. Everybody's talking to each other with the same vocabulary. But in general, in that one, we will dive into it just a little bit, just to make sure we've got landscaping going on in all the right places. So that would be things like parking lots, both the inside and the perimeter, things like buffer yards or transition yards, building facade landscape. We want to make sure that kind of what we can add in terms of landscape, we're doing that and we're making that alignment. So the other element that's here kind of in the general development standards, but I don't know, I gave it its own section, signs. We need to update the sign code. We need to make sure that the sign code is content neutral. That is a statement or a decision that came down from the Supreme Court. We cannot regulate the content of signs, so we need to be kind of very careful and make sure that we're not doing that. There are still a couple of distinctions you can make that have been upheld. One being on-premise versus off-premise, which is just very simply your typical sign versus a billboard. We can still prohibit billboards. Also commercial versus non-commercial messaging. We want to reorganize the sign provisions so that they're much easier to see. So that's really something that we've suggested here. Really looking at a purpose, the general sign standards, prohibited signs, signs that are exempt from permit, signs that require a permit. And my favorite thing that you got that I'm not going to change that's in the current code is the extraordinarily significant signs. We've always called them classic signs. Now that sounds so boring and bland. So we want to keep your extraordinarily significant signs. It is a good thing to have. It is something we recommend to people all the time to keep in their codes because there's some very cool signs out there that really contribute to the character of the city, and we want to have a means to allow them, which you already do, which is great. You've also got special provision sign controls. If you've ever opened up the sign code, as someone maybe want to do in the evening when there's nothing on television, you would come to think that the only way to get a sign done would be through a special provision sign control plan. There are so many of them in there. They are very big. We're not proposing to eliminate them because they have been approved and the rights have been granted. We just want to move them to an appendix so when somebody opens the sign code, they see that they can build a sign per the regulations. Let's just make that simpler, per the types of signs that we want to see. So, to that note, currently your sign regulations are separated into attached and detached signs. We want to make them a little bit more in tune with what's going on within the districts where they're allowed. So we are proposing a different approach. We're going to list out the different types of signs. I'm not going to read all these, don't worry. But you can see here kind of signs that require a permit, signs that don't require a permit. And then we'll go district by district. Some districts may allow certain types of signs, some may not. Some may allow them, but they must be much smaller, others much larger. And what we want to get to there is we want to align how signs look, how big signs are, what types of signs are in place with the design, the form, and the scale of the district in which they're located. Okay, we're really nearing the end here, so this is good. Administration. A couple things here. We want to make sure that administration is clear. A lot of these things come down through the state, and with that in place, we have to abide by those. But we at least want to make it very clear what's going on here. So we've proposed to structure it in 4 articles. Who does what? The code administrators. How do I do it? The zoning application procedures. And then what happens when I've done it? The zoning approvals, what that whole process would be like. And we've said zoning, 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 and also subdivision would be in there as well. A couple of things that we've looked at that we would like to propose some modifications to. The first is variances. You have limits on the types of variances that can be applied for. A variance is supposed to be something you couldn't think of, that is something very unique, some kind of hardship related to the lot, so kind of counterintuitive to say these are what you can apply for, when really a variance is you don't know that you're going to need to apply for something. So we want to make sure that the variance maintains that flexibility. Important to note, the process would remain the same. You still have to go through Board of Adjustment. You still have to do all the evaluations of stuff like that. I mean, it's really just that. It's just eliminating that limitation on the types of variances. We've also proposed to add an administrative modification. This would be a new procedure. This would be something that would be oftentimes called baby variances. that would be approved by the zoning administrator. Couple of things about this. They're very tightly drawn. We have provided one example here of a modification of 10% or less to any dimensional standard. That's something a lot of places use. Doesn't have to be what you use. We can really take a look at this and see where the parameters everybody is comfortable with in terms of allowing for that. It also is important that typically there is some notice with that. The neighbors, it wouldn't be the kind of larger notice of a variance, but at least the neighbors surrounding the property can be notified. We can look at issues like that. And then finally, there's the evaluation standards for the administrative modification as well. Site plan review. We want to evaluate the triggers for site plan review. I mean, really, this is inevitable as you're doing a new district structure, you're doing new uses, you're looking at all these different things. We want to see what exactly is triggering site plan review. So it's really going to be kind of a big evaluation of that, tailoring it by use or by district or by district, by development size, and by when you have alterations or expansions of larger developments. I talk fast, I know. Okay, so there's also kind of in the last part, subdivision. Generally, your subdivision process is typical. I mean, it's the division of land. You're kind of just going through that regular process. Now, there's one thing in there that struck us as kind of not in alignment with the way subdivision happens. You've got this language that says lots must conform in width, depth, and area to the pattern already established in adjacent areas, having due regard for the character of the area. This is very atypical for subdivision standards. Quite frankly, we don't see it all that often, if we've ever seen it at all. When you're subdividing land, you're in a district, you have to comply with the standards of that district. That's really your evaluation criteria. The language here is vague, subjective, it's open to interpretation. What's conforming, what's with due regard, how far does adjacent go? So really, it leads to a lot of subjectivity, and so we want to lead, and that leads to inconsistent application of regulations. So again, kind of as it says here, room for bias or arbitrary decisions, risk of legal challenges, as well as uncertainty. So what we want to do is really look at subdivision and give it the process that subdivision deserves, which is really just looking at the district standards. Okay, plan development. You guys love plan development. You have over 1,200 PDs, and by the time we're getting through this process, I'm slightly afraid to know how many there's going to be at that point. We have somebody back at the office looking at all 1,200 PDs to see what's in them. PD in itself is not a bad tool. It's a good tool to have in the code. Really, the intensive plan development, or PD, it was created to allow for unique and innovative developments, modifications to the base zoning for something that you didn't expect to see or needed some kind of a little bit more flexibility, but had to go through a process that, as you do now, where you're taking a look at kind of everything, you're seeing it going through council, what a PD would be. It's a good tool when it's used that way. When you are now into the point where you're at right now, it's moved beyond its original intent. It's really becoming something to fill the gaps between what's happening out there and what the code allows. And when we see this many PDs, and you're not the only ones that have done this, so don't feel bad, it's a sign that the code is fundamentally, something's broken within it. Because if that's the only way that you can do development, your code's not responding to what's out there. And it's serving as a workaround, essentially. A couple of things with PDs. They are time-consuming for everybody. They are time-consuming for the person submitting the PD. They are time-consuming for staff and for the bodies that evaluate the PD. They are time-consuming for the neighbors who are concerned about the PD. So you're always kind of watching what the PD is doing. And I think there's kind of other ways that, if things are more predictable and consistent, you don't need to do these PDs, you'll get some of your time back. It can be uncertain. What is the PD? What is the final result? What I'm submitting, is that going to be okay? At the end of the process, the neighbors may drop off and things may change and you don't know exactly what's in that PD. And probably its biggest issue is essentially these PDs are all mini zoning codes all over the city. And so when you send somebody out for enforcement because he managed to make it through the code and he found the regulation that they're violating and you ask for enforcement to do it, they may have a PD that's different. And they don't know that, you don't know that, because some of these are very old. And essentially you have to go research and find out what the PD says to see if there's a violation. If you want more consistent enforcement, if more of the city is just subject to the base zoning standards, it's much easier to track when violations are occurring. They make enforcement much more complex. So how do we solve the issue? Some of this you've already kind of can figure out from what we've been saying. Establishing a more responsive district and use structure. This is really something that, things that you're doing by PD, if you've got them in the code, you can just do them by the code. Oftentimes we see this with PD, and once we get, I think, into the higher numbers of the PD in our analysis, we'll start to see it too. There's common conditions that just keep getting applied to all of them. It's the same thing over and over and over again. We've worked in communities where there's literally just a sheet that they give them, and you're going to have to do all of this. Put it in the code. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. So we just want to take those conditions that keep being applied and convert them into standards. And then finally, some administrative flexibilities, things like the administrative modifications. Oftentimes, PDs are coming in because they're a whole bucket of variances and they want to avoid the variance process. So what we want to do and make sure is that we've got options to deal with small modifications that are needed. So finally, our last thing on PD is an alternative approach to plan development. Things to make it a little bit easier to understand, again, a little bit more predictable. Currently, your code treats PD, and I should say this before anything else. All the existing PDs that are out there and that will be out there before Chapter 63 comes into effect remain. We can't change those. They are vested. They are in place. If somebody who owns the PD would like to revoke it, that is on them. But generally, PDs are vested, and PDs are going to continue the way they are, including under what code they were adopted. So codes that reference 51A are going to continue to reference 51A. So just want to be very clear on that. So revising the process on an alternate approach. We find this one to be a little bit more manageable in terms of PD, and it's a recommendation we've put forward. Rather than have it be a district, let's have it be an approval process. So essentially you start with the base district, and then you do what the PD does, the modifications it's requesting as part of that approval, and it lays on top of that base district. One of the benefits there, somebody goes, they get a PD, they get the approval on it, and it sits and sits and sits, and after a certain number of years, if they don't act on it, you can say, hey, the approval expired. You can't do that anymore, it's going right back to the district that it was. And then also what that does is, you see the base district standards that are applying to it. So it makes it easier to see on a map. You'll see maybe it's a C district, a commercial district with a hatch on it. You know at least that C1 district, making up a name, C1 district standards are there. The PD's just modifying those. It's a little more predictable in terms of seeing, how this relates. We're not proposing changes to the process for this. It's really just changing kind of the nature of what it is. Okay. Last slide. So, nonconformities. We are trying to do everything we can to eliminate nonconformities, but that's impossible. And so we're still going to have a bunch of them out there. So we want to make sure the rules for how they get to operate, how they get to continue, are very clear. Now you see the 5 categories that we've got here. Nonconforming uses, nonconforming structures, the other 2 typical ones, a nonconforming lot, a nonconforming sign, and a new one we would like to add, which is the nonconforming site characteristic. And this is something like landscape, fencing, or a parking lot design, so that we're not penalizing the structure itself, we're just looking at that one element that doesn't work. And so essentially saying, hey, when you finally replace, say, I'm making this up, 50% of your fence, that's when you got to bring the whole fence into conformance. Again, making that up just as an example. There is one new provision that we've proposed. It's something that we're seeing a lot, and we're adding into a lot of codes. And it's the idea of allowing for some flexibilities for existing single-family or 2-family or duplex developments that are currently existing, that are in place as the time the code went into effect. So you're not creating new ones. And essentially saying that, hey, if the wall is a little bit too much into the rear yard, or if the wall is a little too much into the side yard, and say, for example, you wanted to pop the top on a low-scale ranch and add a 2nd floor just to make it more livable for your family, we would allow you to do that in line with the wall that's already established without having to get a variance. Otherwise, with a variance, you would have to go and you would either have to set it back, you'd offset it, which looks odd sometimes, or you have to go through the variance process. You cannot violate anything else. The height of the district controls, the building coverage, the impervious surface, the other setbacks, everything else controls. This is really just dealing with that side or rear wall condition that's in place, and basically allowing you to just extend in line with what's already there. Again, being very specific on this, it's just that everything else, you gotta comply with what the code says, in particular things like height and coverage. You may not be able to go back when we're talking about a horizontal extension because you're already covering too much ground. So, and with that, brings us to the end. And the end of the last public meeting. Not the Q, we're doing Q&A, so don't worry, I'm not running away. DallasZoningReform.com is the website. Just to reiterate, the presentation's on there, the executive summary, the code diagnostic. There is a comment form. There is an email that is also there on the site where you can send us your comments. For us, it's very, very important for us to get written comments. We need that documentation so everybody's seeing the same message that you're sending us. So please, use the website to that utility. Again, there's the email there if you don't want to use the comment forms. As we go on, all materials will keep being posted onto the Dallas Zoning Reform. If we get a link to this broadcast, we'll happily put that on the website as well. But at this point, I would really like to open up the room to the Q&A session. Jacob is the man in charge. He did a fantastic job last night. We're going to start, we want to be able to hear some voices we haven't heard, so maybe some preference to that. But Jacob, take it away. No, just wait. This thing's really cool. It lights up, so it's going to be a party. So.
Can we ask questions on the web?
Oh, yes, of course. You don't have to just leave comments. You can send questions, clarifications, anything you want to tell us on the website. That's perfectly fine. Yes, we accept everything.
Did you just say it was going to be all our comments are going to be posted on the website?
We are talking to staff about whether that's going to be happening.
Because I was looking for them already.
Yeah, they're not posted on there right now. We've just received the comment cards. We have not chronicled them at all at this point.
Can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. I'm going to do my very best to hit all four corners, and we're going to try to hear from people that have spoken from the end.
I have a question. You also asked for comments regarding ADUs.
Sure.
Definite no.
Okay.
We don't want them by right. There's a process for that currently going through the Board of Adjustment. It's working fine. There's no point in changing. So please consider that.
Okay.
So your diagnostic report says that proposed development code amendments are based on 30 stakeholder interviews with representatives of local community groups, developers, realtors, engineers, architects, numerous city departments, and members of city boards and commissions. Why does it list any HOAs or neighborhood associations?
The way we initially structured those stakeholder interviews, we were looking for those that are working in a more technical level with the code to see how the code's functioning. It's not really intended to do significant proposals. So it's looking at people like developers or architects who use the code and say, can point us to things that are technically going on with the code. As we move through this process, and I'm going to piggyback on your question to kind of talk about this a little bit more. So the process now is, we've got the code diagnostic out. We've been doing these meetings. We're gathering feedback. We're continuing to take feedback. And then we're going to go and we're going to draft. Once we get the actual draft document out, this type of public engagement is going to multiply by many, many, many meetings. So as there are things out there, if there are organizations that want us to meet once the public draft is out there, we are happy to come and start talking about the language that is within that. I just wanted that for the room. We are looking towards an end of the year for a public draft. That is our goal. That's what we want to get to. But then we'll be coming out after that to do the public draft 1 conversations. After that, once we complete those, we'll do a public draft 2 with Redland. thank you. I apologize for kind of hijacking your question, but I wanted to get that out there. I didn't have a chance to say that.
Just a follow-up. Will you provide the public, the residents, the people that pay taxes in this city and have an interest in this, a list of those stakeholders, the 30 stakeholders? It's important that we know who they are and what their interests are. And please don't underestimate homeowners in this city, particularly some of us who have been intimately involved in a lot of zoning decisions, a lot of issues, initiatives like Forward Dallas, other issues. We know probably a lot more than you give us credit for. So please consider that.
And please don't think, I don't think you know the zoning code. I don't want that impression. We know that there are many that, many folks that aren't within the technical fields that do understand it. I don't want to give that impression that we don't think you know what the code says.
I suspect I'm loud enough, but my name is Katie Monahan. I'm the design director for Dallas ISD, and I'm also an architect. Schools are not currently allowed by right in our code, and that's been a really big obstacle for us to overcome in building new schools and putting additions on schools. How are these reforms going to take into consideration improving the process so that we can build our schools better, faster, and provide better spaces for our students?
We heard a comment. We've already heard a comment regarding the issues with schools and how the code will do that. We will be looking at that as a use, defining it as a use, and then looking at its permission. Right now, I can't commit to it changing from an SUP to a permitted use, just because we're not in that technical phase of drafting yet. But that is an issue that has been brought to our attention. That is something that we're going to absolutely be looking into.
Thank you.
Are churches part of that as well? Churches and churches that have schools, would that be part of the same special category or no?
Can you repeat that for the microphone?
Sorry.
Yeah, just so because we're broadcasting.
So I just add on to the other question, would churches and churches that have schools be included in that separate category, or we ask for another separate category?
Generally, what I'm going to tell you is generally, zoning doesn't care. And in particular, because of the protections on places of worship that come from the federal level under LUPA, that kind of adds another dimension to it. Generally, the way we've done it, we haven't made that distinction. As we look at schools, we'll look and see if there is a need for that. But I will just say from our experience, we haven't. It's all been just, it's an educational facility, primary and secondary.
Thank you. My name is Matt Bonk, and appreciate you coming out and presenting. I had a concern. Basically, you're saying this is, in a sense, patterned after Forward Dallas. And I can tell you, probably many people in this room were not very happy with the way Forward Dallas was. It was not a give and take. It was mostly here it is, accept. And I hope this is not the same way. That's one question. Secondarily, one of the major flaws of Forward Dallas for me was the way single-family neighborhoods were treated. Basically, they were not protected, and we were kind of told we just need to accept the idea of central density coming in, which is not really what most residents wanted. So I hope there will be an opportunity, and this really isn't a done deal, and you just kind of take comments and then march on like it for Dallas.
Yeah, nothing is a done deal. In particular with this, is, as you've seen when we talked about it, we still had single-family districts, and then we had new districts that would address that. As we look at it, we do have to look at the direction that Forward Dallas provides, because it is the adopted document, the adopted policy of the city. But zoning is only one component of Forward Dallas. It's only one tool to implement Forward Dallas of many. So it's not the be-all, end-all of getting Forward Dallas on the ground. We are going to have a lot of opportunity for input on this. As we talked about kind of in that process, there's a public draft 1.0. We will be coming to lots and lots of people. They're not going to be just 5 meetings. There's probably going to be 20 or 30 meetings as we go on our roadshow with what's in the draft. Following that, we're not even going to adoption with that. We're not even going to any kind of adoption process or hearing process. We would do a public draft 2.0, which is a red line draft that shows the changes that are in the code from the first one you saw, so that we can get input on that. That's the one that we hope would serve as the basis for the public hearing draft. I've said that before in other places, and it's not. Sometimes it is. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's important to remember, in particular, as we start to kind of head into the next phase and start, begin to evaluate this stuff and the actual technical proposals, there's a lot of voices in the room. There's a lot of voices in the city of Dallas. It's made up of a lot of different places and a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions. So we have to balance everything that we hear. So that's just something as we're going forward, you'll be seeing that kind of balance coming out in that first public draft, probably more obviously in the second public draft. But that's really, for us, it's important that everybody get a chance to look at, evaluate it, and bring us their feedback. Okay, hello.
I live in District 10, and I do live in a townhouse development, which is has a lot size lower than 3,000 square feet. So, this in general, I would like to see the plan have more ability to increase home ownership by allowing for smaller lot sizes in more places, and doing other things that are going to make it easier for us to increase home ownership. I do think that the gentle density is really great in a lot of ways, but I'd like to see more of an effort and emphasis put on that. And then just a question too, is there any chance of strengthening the tree ordinance potentially? And also, I'm curious about demolition, if that's outside of this, or how we can have, if there's sort of ways to control that. Thank you.
Okay, to your last point, we're starting to hear a lot more things about trees and tree preservation and landscape, so we're going to be taking a look. I will tell you right now offhand, I can't remember how the landscape portion of the current zoning code, how much detail it goes into, but we've been hearing that. We've been hearing stuff about stormwater controls related to landscaping, so we're definitely going to take a look at that. In terms of demolition, you have a demolition overlay district that we can take another look at, our first pass through. We didn't really flag anything that was at issue with it, but we can absolutely take a second, we're going to, regardless of whether it came up, a second look at it and make sure that it's functioning properly.
Hi, I've got a couple of concerns. The main one, and I think this was mentioned about anything by right is taking away the voice of the neighborhood, wherever we're at. That shouldn't even be part of the presentation or your plan. And the second thing, and I didn't hear it, I heard it, I followed it for the last 3 meetings, the SUP. We just went through an SUP this morning or this afternoon for a batch plan. And it's about renewal, process for renewal. I didn't hear you say anything about removing it. You had said removing the time frame of keeping the SUP, but removing that process of renewing it. And I think that, again, is taking away from the voice of the people, because we have a bad actor in District 6. We have a bunch of batch plants. This area, our district is saturated with batch plants, 30 industries. And there's nothing in there. I know you covered IM and some other stuff, but this was an industrial research. But if they're allowed to stay in our neighborhoods, I don't see anything that would stop them, especially the renewal processes taken away.
Yeah, I'm sorry if it wasn't clear enough. We've been saying this in all 5 presentations that we are making the recommendation right now to eliminate renewal of SUPs. We understand this is a big contentious issue, so it's something that we're thinking about. In order for us to we understand the issues in particular with industrial and in particular with the batch plants, that's an issue. And I don't have an answer for right now how technically we can look to address those, but we're going to continue to evaluate the comments that come in on these SUPs, on these batch plants. They're related issues, but they're 2 separate issues as well. In particular, your heavy industrial uses, where they're located, how they're controlled, what conditions are on them. The SUP discussion has brought all of that to the surface, which is something, it is related, but it's also separate that we need to look at as well.
It shouldn't even be part of the presentation of renewing it, doing away with that renewal process. If you don't have an answer for it already, that makes no sense to me.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I live in District 13. I didn't hear the answer to his question. I have 3 college graduates that can't even afford to live in the area where they grew up, went to school, and so lot sizes. Have y'all made recommendations? I know that Houston has done such a good job with that. They've made more affordable housing because of the lot size change. And I might have missed at the very beginning. So if you could just go over what the possibility of lowering that would be. Thank you.
So right now, we put forward a couple of recommendations in terms of you've got districts that go down to 5,000 square feet. We've made the recommendation to add in a district of 3,000 square feet. That is the recommendation as it stands now. Also to make a district that would be 3,000 square feet for, that would also incorporate single family, duplex, triplex as well. This is the proposal we've put forward. These would be new districts. Where they would go on the map right now, we don't know. But we would be creating the tools to allow for those types of districts to exist. I hope that answers the question. Okay, thank you.
But if a district has a certain square footage, you're not going to go into a neighborhood that says, I want half-acre lots, and say, no, a house goes down for 2 acres.
So, yeah, we need to,
I just asked if you're going to redo the neighborhoods that have, say, half-acre lot, and a house comes down, you say, well, now you put 2 houses on.
I mean, the intent is to create for the way it is now, the proposal that we put forth on the table is that we're just right-sizing those. So the acre lot would go from 43,560 to 40,000 just because it makes more lots conform. Our intent is not, we don't intend to take those areas and rezone them for something. We were looking at the way that these districts are and just making sure that the standards work. There is a whole separate conversation that comes up about what happens on the map, but right now our intent is not to do that.
What are you contemplating in lieu of residential proximity school?
So we have a couple of things we've done elsewhere. We don't have the specific, obviously this is brought forth as a concept. We have not done the technical kind of detailed study of what we're going to propose, but in many cases, as you're looking at adjacencies to a site, so you've got a single family lot and it's adjacent to something that would allow for taller development, where we can do that, we are going to create kind of a transitional height that happens. So parts of the building must be lower, a certain distance away. That's one way to do it. There's distancing requirements. We don't have the specifics on that yet. That comes in the next part.
But it doesn't make me feel very sure that you're already saying we're going to get rid of this and come up with something new, and we have no idea what that's going to be.
And that will be part of Public Draft 1.0, where you see exactly what we're talking about and how we're talking about it and how it would be implemented.
Bob Michael, District 13, architect and planner, also first time worked on 2,000 acres in Dallas. So I've been here 50 years, from Texas, so I know what it's like about, and have a real love for Dallas. I want to follow up with some questions that others have asked. So this missing middle that they talk about, that was proposed by Corporate Dallas, did you say that this was only to be applied to new districts and new planned areas, or would it be allowed in existing, let's say, R75 districts?
To be clear, any district can be...
Okay. You also said that you want to take it to R3s. So then put some technical take of R75, which is pretty much the dominant amount of what we have in Dallas. Okay? Very green, very nice area, it's very unique. But you say it's subdivided into 2. Is that what's being proposed?
We are not making any proposals on changing anything on the map at this point. We're not at the mapping stage of this. I think what's important to note is any district in the code can be proposed anywhere in the city. Somebody can come in and ask for it. That is just the nature of the code. That's how that works.
So now you've probably been studying Dallas, you know it pretty well, and you know that we have 142 square miles of vacant land. And when that question was posed to the city, the council and others, why are we attacking or savaging areas already that are okay. Why are we deciding, why don't we take these large areas, which is, if you took that area by itself, it would be the 9th largest city in the state of Texas. And Dallas has the greatest density of any city in the Golden Triangle. We're 3,800 people per square mile. We have some districts that are 12,000, and have high crime rates, which is a real concern. And then just one other thing, just so you understand. When you're talking about Preston Hollow or the interior area, you're talking about acre, half acre, predominantly R16. They are politically charged. And if you think you're going to go in there and apply this to those areas, they're not worried about this. The areas that are worried about this are the R75 fever, because they can't defend themselves from this planning technique that was adopted for Dallas. And those planning techniques have failed in many cities around the country that have adopted, who unfortunately adopted it. It's a flaw. So we're dealing with it now, and there's a lot of concerns, and there's going to be a lot of fight, and people are disturbed by this. I think it's just bad. And I've done probably more planning than anybody in this room. I've been involved in this for 50 years. And I love this one. And this is just a lot of bad ideas.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Did anyone else want to make a comment or ask a question?
Hi, Corey Riker. I'm an architect. I've been working in Dallas for 15 years since I started in college. And I really appreciate the diagnostic report. I think y'all did a really fantastic job on that. You go through that report, which is like a checklist of many of the frustrations that I've run into with homeowners trying to make the best use of their property over the years. And just all sorts of little headaches and the way the code is organized. You don't find out problems until you actually put something in for review. So I think you've really done a great job of identifying the problems. Obviously, there's a big question about what the next steps are. One kind of just a simple question: form-based codes. I've worked in form-based code district. I'm curious how many there actually are. I know one. And then the question of design standards, and if you have any idea what that looks like, how something like that would work. Because I've seen there are various aesthetic standards in certain parts of the code right now that sort of end up with planners dictating to designers and homeowners what their building needs to look like, and I'm wary of stuff like that.
Yeah. So our intent, and I'm going to start, I always say this, I'm going to start backwards. Our intent with design standards, number one, is we're not trying to dictate architecture, we're trying to dictate the good bones of the building, and we're trying to be objective. So we're not, you should do this, or it has to have, and not being very clear on what those elements are. And it would vary, and it may vary along the spectrum of the different districts that are in place in terms of what's required. And trying to tackle some of the issues that people may not like in terms of new buildings that are coming in and address those. We don't want to be the architecture police. You don't have an architectural review board. Nothing wrong with architects. That's not what I'm saying. But you're not set up for that right now. We don't want to kind of integrate a system that's not really going to work or take forever. We know the state of Texas likes to step in. Not as much as the state of Tennessee. We work in Tennessee. They really like to step in. So we know we have some limitations, things like building materials. We can't touch them. Can't do anything about that. So we're mindful of that as well, and kind of keeping an eye, if anything, on that and changes. So our goal is, and we would hope that, architects in the crowd, architect groups would take a look at it and test what we're doing and say, everything you propose here doesn't work. We're happy to have that when the draft code comes out with the standards. The form-based code question, I didn't quite catch it. Are you talking about
generally,
or ours? Or
Dallas? In Dallas.
Okay.
How many districts are there? Because I think it's only adopted through PDs, and I'm aware of one, and I'm just curious if there were actually any others in the city.
I am not sure. We will. Yes, I'm getting a thumbs up that yes, there are others that are out there that are using the form-based. And I think those form-based districts, I don't want to insult them. I hope it didn't sound like I was insulting them. But they're kind of a whole different way of doing zoning. We want to take the good things from those and integrate them into all the districts in various forms to get that design. I think there's one more form-based comment, though. I can't tell you where they are, if that's your question, so.
It's just like a really frustrating experience using it, because the way it works is you have to have the base code up here, and then you have to read the PD regulations, which then altered the form code. So you couldn't just look at the form code document, you had to be reading 2 or 3 documents simultaneously.
We noticed. That's one of the things we noticed. Sorry.
Okay. Your diagnostic report proposes duplexes, triplexes, and quadruplexes as residential housing types. Recent changes to the parking requirements in the building code also encourages building even 6 or 8 plexes on a standard R5 or R75 lot. All of this proposed infilling eliminates the single-family zoning that currently exists. How is this compatible with Forward Dallas 2.0 that calls for the placing of this type of greater density at transitional areas such as major intersections? What you are proposing violates Forward Dallas 2.0.
So we've made no proposals as to where these districts go. What we're doing is providing the tools. It's the tools in the toolkit. It's creating the districts that Forward Dallas talks about that are kind of that missing middle general density development that's desired, and really making sure that we're getting those into place, and so that when there's areas that are appropriate for those, that they're done, they're able to be used. They don't have to go through these other processes. At this point in the process, we have not made any proposals as to where those districts go. So that is, just to be very clear on that, because there's a whole second component to this, which is the map, and that's where districts go. But we have not made any recommendations on that end. And I think, did we? Okay. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up. The rec center is closing, so we're going to have to close up the comment period. Again, we really recommend that everybody provide written comments on this. Visit the website, send us emails. We really appreciate it.
Well, what do you guys make of that?
Make sure you're out.
You had lots of
Purposely now, I'm really, but it's really been a experience. Really, great to see you guys. Yeah, that's so good. Enjoy your trip. Hey, thanks for wasting my campaign contribution. Let's move you out of that game. Let's move you out of the